Alright, so I have a KTM 250 SXF. The manual's for 2005-2006. Now what I did is I did the valve clearance, check the shims and everything like that. What it calls for is the intake. It's hard to see. Intake is 0.10 to 0.20 millimeter. The exhaust is 0.12 to 0.22. As long as you're in between those two, you're alright. First step, you gotta take the side cover off, remove the bolts, and put a 17 millimeter on that. Take your spark plug off. This is the cap that's at your top. It's gonna have 3 bolts, 10 millimeters to take your top case off, and that's just the breather tube. I removed my throttle cables just to make it easier. Now what you have to do, there's a bolt that's right there. It's got a little 6 millimeter Allen key. And what you have to do is you have to find top dead center and remove this ring, and that'll lock your crank in top dead center. Now how you do that is you work off this line here, and there's a dot on each cam, intake and exhaust. It's going to have a dot. If you can't see it, just wipe the oil off and you'll start to see the dots. They'll come together, and you just have to wiggle this back and forth until this easily drops in. Do it by hand. Don't do it with the wrench or anything like that. So now once you have it at top dead center, you're going to see your intake lobes and your exhaust lobes are both pointing up. Not directly up, but they're pointing up. So then you take wherever my feeler gauge set is, this here, you got to measure them in millimeters. Now I got this off a Motorcycle Superstore. Pretty thin feeler gauges. They work out pretty good. And what you have to do is you have to stick them in here, in between the rocker arm and your cam lobe, and that'll give you your clearance. Now what I first had, it's hard to see my writing, I had 0.18, 0.14 on the exhaust, which is in tolerance, and then I had 0.09, it's a little tight on the intake, and then I couldn't get a feeler gauge in this right side. So what you have to do is, I went to the store and got different size shims to bring it down, and you can get increments of 0.04 to go less to give you more clearance in there. So now to remove those, you have to take your chain tensioner, the bolt, and you just grab that with a little pair of pliers, and this will actually pull right out. You want to get the new O-ring that's inside of that, because it works off of oil pressure inside of the timing chain. And so this will give you a kind of rough idea, kind of taking the cam chains out. And then once you have it all out, I put on the cam chain, I put a zip tie on that, and then I also used a piece of copper wire to kind of, I fished it this way and held the timing chain up from falling down. So then once you have that all apart, you get your shims correct. You want to, before you go to put it together, there's a process that you have to do with your cam chain tensioner. So you have to fully depress it from you put the small end down and then the concaved end up, and you fully depress it all the way down. Oil's going to come out. It's a little hard to keep pushing down. If you need a break, just rest your thumb and then keep going at it. It's going to go all the way down to the ground. Now with the big things, before you do anything, you need a 2mm to 2.5mm washer. I used one of them. I had a 2.49 exact washer, so I just used one of them. If you have one, you can get away with it, but it's recommended that you have two of them, because once this goes all the way back to its normal state, to fully expanded, you have to put the washers down and press it till it sits on top of those washers. Now that's a part of the preload. So now when you go to assemble it, where the hell was I? That'll give you an idea what the shims and the valves look like. Those are the shims inside of there that you have to replace these small little discs. There, that gives you a picture with the timing chain with the wire tie. And this bolt here for that is a 13/16. So all you really need is a 10mm and a 13/16 and a set of feeler gauges and a 2mm to 2.5 feeler gauge, or a washer to do this job. So now when you're going to reassemble it, you line your intake dot up, and then you bring your exhaust cam in, and you line that exhaust dot up. So then once you have that all set, you can tighten your bolts up in sequence. First you gotta, I don't want to show you. It's going to be these two bolts. Tighten those to 18 Nm. I did that. It comes out to 13.27 foot-pounds. And then your next set will be this piece here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts and 2 nuts. And those are all 18 Nm, which would be the same 13.27 foot-pounds. And then now you would stick your tensioner back in there, put the cap back on. I also got a new crush seal too. It's a copper crush seal. And then once you have that assembled, you take a screwdriver and you press again. Which I did is I removed these bolts so I can actually pull this way, pull the two of the motor so I can get a screwdriver in there, and you actually engage. You press on that cam tensioner, and that will release and expand inside of there and put the right pressure on there, because your oil pressure hasn't built up yet. So that'll take care of that, and then it'll be tight. Then you can go ahead and check these again to make sure you have the right specs. If it's not the right specs, don't be afraid. Do the step again until you get everything perfect. Now what my final ending was, also if you want to know, the 1 Newton meter equals 0.737 foot-pounds. And this is what I ended up with. This 0.06 actually was a 0.09. It's a little tight, but it's within. It should be all right. Now I checked this at 65.2 hours I have on the bike. So that's pretty much it. I mean, don't be afraid to jump into it. It's not that hard of a task. And good luck with it. And wish you the best and happy riding. Brap.